Are you overwhelmed by motherhood and barely keeping your head above water? Are you confused and frustrated by how all the other moms make it look so easy? You can't figure out how to manage the chaos in your mind, your home, or your family. I get you, mama. Parenting with ADHD is hard. Here is your permission slip to let go of the Pinterest-worthy visions of organization and structure fit for everyone else. Let's do life like our brains do life. Creatively, lovingly, and with all our might. When we embrace who we are and how our brains work, we can figure out how to live our lives successfully and, in turn, lead our families well. At the end of the day, we just want to be good moms. But, spoiler alert, you are already a great mom. ADHD does not mean you're doomed to be a hot mess, mama. You can rewrite your story from shame spiral to success story. And I'll be right here beside you to cheer you on. Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. Hey there, Successful Mama. It's your friend Patricia Sung. Before we jump into today's episode, let's hear our review of the week. This one comes from Rainbow85, titled Makes You Feel Less Alone. After looking into ADHD for my son, I started to realize it was describing myself. I'm now in the process of getting a diagnosis. This podcast has helped me write down the thing I'm struggling with now and as a child. Please don't ever stop. Praise hands, heart emoji. Thank you, Rainbow. You know, sometimes I think, why am I doing this? And then I get these messages. I'm like, please don't ever stop. I don't know that I could ever stop. Even though a lot of times I doubt, is this really worth it? This is a lot of work. Is it worth it? I love so much what I do. I can't even imagine not doing it. It feels weird. Kind of feel like I'm going to be 95 and still telling people about ADHD. Maybe there'll be so much information that I won't need to do this. And I can just tell people all day long. We'll see. Here's to the future. So we're going to do a 2-part series on planning trips and packing for trips, because as we're getting solidly in the spring here, we're starting to think about summer vacations, hopefully, and traveling is a lot for ADHD brains. It's a lot to think of because it's future time, and future time doesn't exist for us. And there's a lot of planning and logistics that go into trips. And I now understand why my mom used to always say she hated vacations, because they were so much work, especially since she had 5 kids. Now, traveling is extremely important to me and my husband. It's one of the things that we bonded over during dating, and we traveled a lot together before we had kids, and we knew that we wanted our kids to be well traveled going into it. And obviously we did not realize what we're getting into on that. And our visions of what travel looks like is very different now with kids than what it was before. So I'm going to walk you through what it looks like for us planning a trip, and next week about packing for the trip. Now, the other reason I want to bring this up is because our ADHD Moms Luxury Weekend Retreat is also happening this year. It'll be our 2nd annual one, and it's probably going to be in October. Right now, I am talking to the hotel and negotiating the contract and everything, so I should have details for that very soon. But until then, if this is something you'd love to do, it's going to be here in Houston, probably in October, and you can put your name on the wait list. So as soon as I have details, I will email them and let you know what's going on, and that way you will get the early bird pricing options and be able to mark that out on your calendar and be here for that trip. It is amazing. We stay at an amazing hotel downtown. I am a huge foodie, so I take you to some of my favorite restaurants here in Houston. We also spend some time learning about our brains and understanding how can we understand ourselves better so that we can truly be the best moms and humans that we want to be and show up for ourselves and our families every day in the way that we want to. There's also time for relaxing. We make friends. It's so much fun. You should come. Put yourself on the wait list. It is patriciasung.com/retreat-waitlist. And I'll let you know as soon as I know what's going on. We're almost there. I'm hoping to have early bird ready for May. So let's dive into how do I plan for trips for our family. First thing I will note is that I have an entire episode on how to travel on an airplane with kids. Pre-pandemic, we did a ton of traveling. My oldest was on like over 20 trips before he was 2. So he was a well-experienced flyer. And I absolutely adore exploring the world. So go back all the way to episode 19, where I explain how to travel with small children, specifically for babies, toddlers, and preschoolers on airplanes. Now, the first thing we should look at is our dates. What are our choices? Figure out what our budget is. Where have we been wanting to go? Sometimes it's determined for you, like, somebody's wedding. But brainstorming where are the places we would like to go? What kind of transportation we're going to need to get there? Does it have to be an airplane? Do we want to consider driving? What are our lodging options? So I would say we probably spend a couple weeks kind of tossing around ideas. But whenever we finally decide, I try to book as many things as possible in that moment so that I can cross as many things off the list as I can. So how we're traveling to get there, the hotel, transportation while we're there, if we need a rental car, if we're going there for a specific event, like making sure we have those tickets reserved. As much as I can, I just try to knock it all out in hyper-focus mode right then. I also make sure that I have it written on my calendar immediately. That's one of the things that I teach about is like, no, I'll write that down later. No, you won't. No, you won't. Don't lie to yourself. No, you won't. Write it down now. I also schedule myself a re-entry day. So the day after my trip, I don't schedule other things. That gives me a chance to get my bearings, catch up on laundry, just re-exist in the world, especially like if something gets delayed and you end up getting in late the next day. Like, gone are the days of my 20s when I would happily fly in at 11 p.m. on Sunday and show up at work regular time on Monday. No, ma'am, that's not how this goes now. That means sometimes that our trip is shorter, and I think that's totally worth it, in my opinion. In that same vein of like writing everything down right away, I also use an app called TripIt. I really like this one because whenever I get my email confirmations, I forward them to, they have like a main email of like plans@tripit.com or something like that. And it's connected to my account. So when it gets this confirmation from my account, it automatically puts it in this app and then keeps track of all the stuff there in the app for me. So when I go on the trip, I have everything there. This is like not a sponsored ad or anything. It's just an app I love. And you can also share that with other people so they can see it. So like if my husband ends up being the one to buy the plane tickets, and he forwards me the confirmation and then I forward it to TripIt. So it's all in my app in one place. Generally speaking, Google will usually add it to my calendar for me when it comes through. But if not, put it on the calendar right away so that it's all exists in real life, that I don't forget. Next step is going through and thinking through, like, is there anything unusual about this trip or anything that's going to take me more time than normal? Things like looking at the travel requirements. Like for a long time, I don't know, I probably should look this up before I said this, but before Southwest, if they were under 2 and were a lap baby, you were required to bring their birth certificate with them. But like United never did. I didn't really understand why that was, but here we are. Do you need any vaccinations for that country? Do you need a travel visa? Do you want to have global entry if you're traveling out of the country? A lot of credit cards will have that as a benefit that they will reimburse you for the fee once every 4 years. So if you have a credit card with that, side note, maybe worth that. Make sure your passport, you have one, first of all, if you're going out of the country, or check the expiration date because usually you have to have like something like 6 months or something left in it, or else they won't let you leave or return. So make sure you've got plenty of time on the expiration date. Are there any other like interesting arrangements you would need to make, like pet sitting or somebody getting your mail? You don't necessarily have to do all those things right now, but knowing that they exist will allow your brain to like sit on them. And then I will actually like note in my calendar when those major things need to happen. So if we're going on a big trip, I'll make a note, a month ahead on my calendar of like, this is the day I need to go through and figure out this stuff so that it reminds me at that time. You can use that in another app. And like side note, I generally don't use my calendar for to-do list things because then it ends up being like a muddled mess. What I will do is make a note on that day, but then when I do my weekly prep for what's coming up, I will take that thing and then put it where it belongs. So it doesn't just live on the random day. It either is like, I need to go to the store to buy snorkel equipment. Like I will put 11 a.m. on Monday, go to the store to buy snorkel equipment. or I will put it on when I do my prep time so that when it's that day, I'm like, oh, right, I need to add all these things to my list. And then I can delete them off my calendar so they don't just live there in limbo. Like once they go on the to-do list where they need to go, my calendar is not the keeper of that information anymore. So just clarifying that note. Next up is research. Assuming that you're going to be there for fun and not for wedding activities for 3 days straight. We look at what are the top activities we want to do on that trip? And then make some notes of anything we might need to know. Things like a lot of times museums will be closed on certain days of the week. A lot of restaurants will be closed on Mondays or Tuesdays. Knowing those little things that oh my goodness, we would be so disappointed if we went to go to this place and then found out it is not open every Thursday or whatever. And we categorize them by these are our top must do. This is the reason we're going for these things. And then also stuff that's nice to do of well, I'd like to do this, but if the doo-doo hits the fan, we don't have to do those things. Or we just run out of time. But we already have a brainstorm of what we want to happen on that trip. So that way, when it gets closer and we're actually trying to arrange what we're doing when, we already know kind of what we want to do. And we're not trying to do the whole process from scratch, a week out. We already know we want to do these 5 things. It'd be nice if we could also do these 3 things. And that's what we want to happen on this trip. That also gives us information for what needs to be planned. Now, if any of these things are if we don't get to do this trip is not going to be successful, then we research those before we do the trip. Example, we've really been wanting to go see the monarch butterflies where they migrate in the winter. Side note, my yard is full of native plants and we have a ton of milkweed because the monarch butterfly, which my oldest told me, is the state insect of Texas, apparently, according to him. I didn't actually verify that. And so we have a ton of milkweed because I love watching them. It's very peaceful to me. But I want to make sure that there's plenty of food for the caterpillars and that we're helping the population. Also, sad face, they are officially endangered. Anyways, we want to do this trip, which sounds great, but the only time of the year that you can go is obviously when they are migrating in the winter, so you have to go from December to February-ish. It's well, the kids are in school, so we're going to figure that out at some point. But that kind of thing, it's if I want to do this thing, I'm going to make sure I know when the right time of year is to do that before we book, not after. Okay, now, when we get to be a month out, now assuming that this is a big trip that we planned and not a thrown together last minute doodad, about a month ahead, this is when we go back to those special event notes, any last minute reservations that we need, rental cars or special food reservations, or if you need to order Thanksgiving catering, whatever that is, those things happen about a month ahead of time. Then when we're about a week or 2 ahead, this is when I go through and make sure that I have everything that I need. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to talk about packing, so I'm not going to talk about that here. But this is the point where I'm did I buy all the things I need to buy? We also look at the weather and kind of make a tentative plan for what we're going to do when. But it's pretty loose. Nothing's written in stone for us. It might rain this day, so we may have to rearrange this or that. We kind of just know, here's roughly what our parameters are, I guess. And this is also, we look at, the meal plan. How many meals are we eating out? If we're somewhere where we can cook, do we want to make a grocery list or have schedule a grocery pickup? Do we need to make a parking reservation at the airport? Those things that, I want a little more time for. And then the week ahead, it's really focused on the packing. So we'll talk about that next week. I want to have most of my planning done at this point because the packing process is more stressful for me. So this week ahead, it's really do I know what's going on? Do I have all my details, my maps and directions places? If you're going to a major metropolitan city, do you have the app for the subway? It's mostly just a confirmation that I have everything that I need because I don't want to also trying to figure out what's happening on the trip while I'm packing and doing laundry and all that. So that allows me to have most of the planning and prep done the week before. So the week before is mostly packing and then whatever things I inevitably forgot about, because that always happens. So that makes that space a little bit, it's just less stressful because I don't have as many things to worry about. And the more that I practice this prep, the less that I am super stressed and up to 2 a.m. packing. If you know, you know. But yeah. That's like this whole process has helped a lot. Now, granted, I have learned most of this from my very neurotypical husband, who is very much a planner. And we definitely divide and conquer. I think if you're traveling in a group, it's definitely worth having a discussion about who's going to be in charge of what. Like, generally speaking, like, we divide and conquer on, like, he's responsible for booking the hotel and the airfare and, like, all those kind of reservations of, like once we decide what we're doing, he's the one who actually, like, makes them happen. And I'm responsible for buying the things we need, packing, putting it in suitcases, making sure the kids have everything they need, packing their bags for car or airplane travel. So that's how we divide and conquer. But like, we're all both involved in a lot of those steps. It's not like I'm just like, you figure out airplane tickets, bye. I include my 2 sons and we work on those together. Because I will say, like, a lot of the, like, logistics things we talk through because we want to make sure that we're making the best choice, especially, like, you know, when it involves, like, late flights, making sure, like, are kids going to be capable of functioning in an airport at 10 p.m.? Probably not. Like, I can still remember there was a trip where, like, our flight got super delayed and we ended up getting in at, like, almost 11 p.m. At the time, our oldest was probably, like, 2.5. And we very rarely check bags. We were carrying all of our suitcases. My husband had the car seat on his back in a backpack. And we have this super cool, like, rolly suitcase that, in theory, my oldest was supposed to just, like, ride on and I could pull him. But he was so tired at that point. Like, he couldn't even balance on the suitcase. He refused to walk. He basically was just like, I'm so tired. I am not doing anything. And we're, like, standing here looking at each other. Like, we got off, like, the jetway and we're standing at the gate just looking at each other like, I don't understand how we're going to get to the car. Like, I think there was a lot of bribery involved. Like, I think we ended up giving him snacks the whole way to be like, walk a little farther, we'll give you another, like, cracker or whatever, because, oh my goodness, it was terrible. But you know what? That was a rare occasion. Like I said, he was on probably 20 trips in the first 2 years of his life. And there's only like 3 trips that stand out where I was like, oh dear, this was rough. But usually for like something minor. And it's totally worth it every time. But it's an effort to get there. Now, I am going to put all of this onto a checklist for you, so you can just go to my website and download it. I'm going to put the link in the show notes because I haven't made it yet, so I don't have a link yet. But I'll put in the show notes where you can go and download this list so that you already have it all written down. You don't have to make it. Voila. So you can plan your next trip and be ready to go. Now, I'm going to add a little extra section on the end here because we were talking in last month in Successful Mama Meetups. One of the days, like, I have every, like, social time is different because I don't want anyone to get bored. And this particular week, one of the rooms was, like, if you want to just ask other moms for their opinion on something, go here and ask. And so the people who wanted to ask a question or wanted to give advice show up in this room. And this mom asked, like, I'm leaving on my first trip by myself and I'm very stressed because my daughter is just very anxious when I'm not there. What should I do? Like, do you have any tips for me? So clarifying, her daughter is 22 months. So obviously the advice will be different depending on how old your child is. But the overwhelming response from the other moms is that your daughter will be fine and you will be fine. Most of them were like, my kid does not care that I left. They have so much fun doing whatever is, like, unusual about staying with somebody else or not having mom around. They're like in hog heaven because they ate extra treats and probably got to stay up later than usual and do things that they don't normally get to do with you. Like, that's how it is for my kids. Like, they have so much fun that they're kind of like, oh yeah, you called? Cool. All right, we'll see you later. Like, they're like, do not care. There are some kids who are really going to struggle with this. And in this case, like, you know your kid best. You will know if it will be more helpful for them to talk with you while you're away, or if, like, ooh, that might be really hard for them. And, like, in this case, when the little girl's 22 months, like, at that point, kids don't have a full concept of, like, I can see mom on the phone. I don't understand why she's here. So, like, that might not be, like, an age where you really need to call and talk to them because they don't understand that you're not there and, like, why can't you be here? Like you're here on the phone but not in person. Like, that doesn't make sense to them. So, like, that may not be helpful for you to call them every day. It might make them more upset. And for some kids, like, one of the moms said even for her, like, her son, I think, was like 7. Like, he still doesn't do well when she calls if she's on a work trip. So she just doesn't call as much as she wants to or at all. And one of the moms gave really great advice of like, whoever you're trusting to take care of your kid, hopefully you also trust them enough to make the call of like how your kid's doing that day and ask them like, hey, like, what's their capacity today? Like, are they in a good mood? Like, or are they really missing mom and they'd feel better to talk to? Or are they like, oh, that's really just, we talked yesterday and they were a hot mess afterwards. Like, that's probably not a good idea. Like, trust that they can make a good decision of whether or not it would be helpful for you to call or not. Some other good ideas were like sending photos of what you're doing so that they can see you, but it's not a video like, hey, where are you? Why aren't you here? So like texting photos throughout the day of the 3 things you did that day. Or just one. Let's not make it complicated here. And like they also might be at the age where like it would be really sweet to leave them a note for every day that you're gone, or make a little scavenger hunt activity so that they could find like some little doodad every day that you're gone, like to like have something to look forward to, or to like have a countdown of like mom will be back in 3 days. But again, that depends on how old they are and how much they struggle with those concepts of you being gone. And you know your kid best, but also know like it's really good for you to be away and just be a person and not mom for 24, 48 hours a week. Like that time away is really good for you to allow yourself to be just responsible for you and not being the snack manager and nap time provider and all like the other 400 hats you wear. Like that's really good for you. And oftentimes it's good for our kids to know, like one of the moms recommended, that Daniel Tiger, grown-ups come back. Like grown-ups come back. You're only going for a little bit and you'll come back. And they were okay. And there will be some kids who really struggle with this, but most of the time it's really good for them to know that you're your own person, and setting them up to see that mom still gets to be her own person so that when they grow up, they have a really healthy understanding of what it looks like to take care of yourself as a parent or as a grown-up, and knowing that it can be done, that you can take care of yourself and still be a really great mom. So I'll leave you with that parting knowledge. It is okay for you to be away from your family, and everyone will be fine, and that you deserve that time to be on your own and slow down and take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon, Successful Mama. For more resources, classes, and community, head over to my website, motherhoodinadhd.com.